Hello and welcome to my new episode or new part to my process in learning to draw in VR. This time, wait, let me remove, the guides. Yeah. But this time I learned about animated brushes. And I know I learned about all the brushes before, but this time it's more specific on animated brushes and the different types of animated brushes you can have and how they can affect your artwork. Um, so now I'm going to go over my summary. So first of all, I wanted to say that, which haven't written down, I think, is that the first panel has basically, I think, no animated brushes. So it only gets started in the second to fourth. So in general, there are three types of animated brushes. Type 1 is environmental, which I'll explain more later, but type 1 is considered environmental. So you can animate in the place we paint them. So, well, I'll explain later. And then type 2 is a simple animated line. And type 3 is a directional animations. So I'm going to go over it. Here are some examples. So let's go with smoke first. So here's smoke. So environmental animations, obviously they work best in to make an environment, because they don't stand out too much. They just slightly animate usually. So for example, the smoke has a slow warble, and so it animates in place. But generally, these animations don't have a specific direction, and as you can see, they're independent to direction. So no matter if I did a line, it looks like it's a line. Although it looks like it's a line, the specific animation on this part and this part and this part is all identical, with slightly different timing. So that's the point with environmental. Some other examples is fire, and this is an easy way to put it. So you can see fire, no matter what, goes upwards. So even if you select it, where is it there? And then you turn it around, it still goes up in the same exact direction. So that's an example of how it's independent to direction. Then the embers, that was embers, sorry. Fire, I missed, okay. Fire is the same. So, well, wait. Okay, now I realize. So specifically, you would think, okay, it's going in the direction that you draw it, but the thing is, you cannot change the direction it is. It's always the same animation, the same exact way. So you'll see the tops always look the same. So it's a consistent same animation, which you can't really change, and also it goes in the direction that you draw it, and then you can't change it anymore. So that wouldn't put the fire away from the line. So that's what he meant by that. Then the stars, again, it's an obvious one. It stays in place and it doesn't really go in a direction specifically. So you cannot really change the way it animates in that way, except for changing the brightness and color. And then bubbles as well, it just wobbles. Now type 2, simple animated line. So this often with audio brushes. So if you go to audio brushes, actually, okay, never mind. But generally, it's more the audio brushes which have this. And here you can see, for example, electricity. It's like, first of all, the important thing is that these are all lines, and they usually have a simple, consistent animation, which doesn't really have any directional input. So here it's independent to direction, so it can have a directional input, but you cannot change it. Here it's just a straight line. So that's the whole point of this, is that most of these are all lines with an animation which is consistent throughout and doesn't really get affected throughout. So the only one which has a subtle directional difference is the chromatic wave. Here, okay. Which here you can see, how you described it, the YouTube channel is like when you go like this and like this, there is, when you look very carefully, there is probably a slight direction if you see where my hands are going. but this is so subtle that he would still consider it in type 2. But he wants to show that there are connections between the different types. But this is a good way to think about it and to organize your drawings for environments. For example, certain ones like directional animations, the next one, have specific strengths and weaknesses. And these are also, they're all, as I said, because you know exactly what they're gonna do, like they're very predictable. So like they're the same in every place. So like if you draw loads of them, or not that, whoopsies. Let's go electricity. If you draw loads of it, you predict exactly like here or here what happens. It's the exact same, except for the fact that they're pinched. So yeah, that's that. Let's go with rainbow. And rainbow is actually a good example. Wait, let's go thick rainbow. So here you can see how it animates, but then when you select it, so it animates in the same way throughout. It's not like a direction, but if you turn it around, the colors also turn around. So it is affected by direction in this case. Okay, now the last one is directional animations. And these generally are much more poppy because you can change the direction, which makes them more abstract and stand out if you make a lot of different lines in different directions. And basically, so let's go. So neon pulse is the first one. Wait, where was it? There. So here, this one, for example. Oops, that was like. So yeah, here you can clearly see it goes in the direction of the brush. So you can make different lines go in all sorts of different directions. And if you, I'm not sure, I have to practice this. But for example, with what was it? The light wire. Where's that? Here. So he showed an example of trying to make. Wait. Okay. So with the different lights, to try to make it so that, like these generally, the directional animations generally combine the lights. So for example, well, some of them like the disco, or was it the comet? Or the streamers. Oh yeah, here, streamers weird with overlaps. So let me just compare. So, wait, let's go much thicker. So 1, 2, 3. So here you can see it's very inconsistent. It's not very balanced the way they're spread out. Whereas here, in terms of the colors, the animation itself, and by the way, it's all in one direction, in the direction you draw it in. But these, they usually go in the same time. So I usually try to combine. That's why I said timing combines them. So there are some differences between the type 3s. And for example, this shows that how the streamers may be a bad choice if you want to make loads of things in the air, because it's going to be very confusing. So yeah. And the disco... What was that? Here, the disco. So this is another great example, except this one goes in the opposite direction. So let's say I draw it this way. The animation clearly goes backwards. It's moving backwards, like a wave going backwards. And yeah, once again, this is a thing which goes in a direction. It's is animated everywhere, and you can change the way it animates. So basically, type 3, it's hard to exactly differentiate. I've been struggling to explain exactly what he meant. But when looking at the different brushes, easier to see with examples. And you can see that type 3 is probably the most out there. You can do the most things. And therefore, I put a list on here, the different ways to affect brushes. So listening to him, I made up the main ways you can affect the brushes. There's brightness, color, direction, size, and animation within music. So here you can see that generally the type 3s have the most to them. So you can actually change, well, you can change the direction. And then, like most of these, type 3 is much more changeable. And for example, the type 1 is generally not animated with music and isn't really, you cannot really change a direction. Type 2, you can change the direction, but it's predictable direction. Well, it's predictable as in throughout it's the same thing the whole time. However, so yeah, so the first type is generally you cannot really affect its direction and animation with music. The second type, however, you can mostly change animation with music, but less the direction. It's generally the same thing throughout, so you cannot really affect the direction of flow or the feeling it gives in terms of direction. And the third type is generally the most fluid. You can change it in the most ways. So that's a good way to put it. And overall, well, first of all, Type 3 ones usually take more PC power because it takes much more detail and much more. Wait, I need to twist myself. Much more like specific needs for the PC to calculate how the brushes will go. So that's the thing to keep in mind, as my PC really isn't that strong if I make a big drawing or world. And animated brushes stand out. So yeah, this is sort of a conclusion that overall all these animated brushes, they stand out. Let's say in a drawing, like unusual paintings in art, there's nothing really other than bright colors that can make it stand out. But here you can actually make things blink or something, or like pop with bright like gloominess, which can really make these stand out. And can make I wanted to say pop, just write it like this. So yeah, and they can make art pop, which is what I meant to say, which is a really unique aspect of 3D art. And as a way I can think of it, for example, if I'm making an environment to explain, like in a forest, and you have like a big sword, which is the main focus, you can add an animation on it and makes it like it's glistening, like it's enchanted and like special. Or the background, you can add some stars which light up on and off with the stars brush, which can make the environment really pop more than in normal art. So yeah, that's the conclusion of all animated brushes. Now I think I learned a lot about how I can use these animated brushes and how to think about them in my head, because it feels very overwhelming. Even though I learned everything about them, it feels overwhelming to look at this and to choose one specific type. But when I have these three types to split the animated brushes into, I can have a better idea of what I'm going for and what sort of brushes I want to use. So yeah, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time.